Good morning. Actually, it's 1:30, so good evening, afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Carter's Corner Daily. I'm your host, Travis Carter. All right, so bit of an interesting day yesterday. Need the light. Thought it was a bit dark in here. Hang on. There we go. That's better. That's a lot better. So, very interesting day yesterday. For the ones that were watching the news, you probably saw that the Nurses Doctors Union decided to put on a rally. Now, I have to give credit to Roger Cook, credit where credit is due. He did face the music. He did go down there and do a bit of a presentation, a bit of a talk. A few people were not too happy about it. If you want to see the live and unedited raw footage of it, on Facebook you can find it at camcast.live. Actually, I might check the link to it in now for you, so if you do want to have a look for it. I want this one. Where are we? Camcast Live. There it is. So in the comment section, copy that one over here. Boom. There you go. If you want to have a look at it, it's in the messages in this chat. So the actual live unedited video footage is from there. The guy that recorded it is actually a friend of mine. He did a lot of the other recording for us. He also did the Soul Anzac Marcher. So he gets around a little bit. Very, very good cameraman. I'm very, very impressed with what he does. And his knowledge on the industry is phenomenal. So he's the one that helped me get my start. So please head over to Camcast Live, give it a bit of a like, follow, subscribe, or whatever, the social media things. And all the footage, speeches, and everything's there. And he's actually given anyone permission, if they want to use it for their own videos, you're more than welcome to go grab it and just download it from Facebook and you're good to go. So which is really cool. So later, directly after that protest, there were 2 new press releases come out from Parliament House. So I want to go grab them right now. So the first one came at 4 p.m. from Roger Cook. So I'm just pulling it up now for you. And this, again, it just screams of, we've got to do something, quick, let's do this, and this is the outcome. So a quick background, there was I always mess up the pronunciation with this one. So Aswath's family, I think Aswath's is the family name. So a person presented to the hospital with symptoms, got checked out by a nurse, and then 3 hours later, before they had a chance to go see a doctor, Aishwarya passed away. So I think they're considering it a preventable death. Now, the reason Roger Cook is in the trouble is because he wouldn't do an inquiry. So with something like this, a preventable death should have been inquired about straight away, not to find blame on who did the wrong thing. But so let's say the nurse followed procedures and the procedures was the cause of the passing away of the person. It means your procedures are not correct. They need to be updated. So the inquiry should have gone, right, do our procedures need to be fixed? Would this have been prevented if we changed something else to prevent it from happening to someone else? But they delayed and they wouldn't do inquiry. And that's hence the reason why there was a big protest, because it looked like Roger Cook was trying to throw the nurse under the bus for saying that she wasn't doing her job properly. So you can't just say someone's done something wrong without actually investigating it. To my understanding, there was no investigation at all. Okay, so the press release that came out, I'll just bring it up for you now. Boom. So this came out at pretty sure it was 4 o'clock. I'm just checking now. Yeah, 4 p.m. on the dot, this came out. So if we go through it now, it is Yep, PCH Emergency Department independent inquiry details finalised. It's almost like they're saying, "Oh, we're always going to do it. We just had to finalise the details." I think this is just him trying to dive for cover. I think this is a smokescreen to try and pretty much try and save his job. Okay, so terms of reference finalised. Yeah, I had to get my coffee. Following consultations with a Shawari Warrior Ashwath's family. I really need to get someone to teach me how to say these names properly. I'm really bad for it. I know it's a failing of mine. So if you do know anyone who, I don't even know what language this is. If you do know anyone that speaks that language and is happy to try and teach me the pronunciations properly, please get them to get in contact with us. I'd love to be able to get some of these names done properly. Independent inquiry by Australian Commission on Safety and Quality in Healthcare. Inquiry report detailing the findings, conclusions and recommendations expected to be completed within 10 weeks from the start of the inquiry. Do they actually say what date is going to start? Not sure. Let's find out. Health Minister Roger Cook has today outlined the terms of reference for an independent inquiry into Perth's Children's Hospital Emergency Department following the death of Aishwarya Ashwath. The inquiry is estimated. The inquiry is established under Part 14 of the Health Services Act 2016 and will be undertaken by the Australian Commission on Safety and Quality in Healthcare, ACSQHC. I don't think that really helps to make it easier. This is a separate entity established under the Commonwealth government to lead and coordinate national improvements in the safety and quality of healthcare. So this is actually a really good thing. So they're not self-auditing in this one. They're actually using a federal auditor. So obviously federal government at the moment is Liberal. They are Labor government. So we'll be getting a Liberal government auditing the Labor government. Some people are going to argue same sort, different sides of the same coin, and you're probably right. The inquiry will focus on the specific factors which contributed to Aishwarya's death in the PCH Emergency Department on April 3rd, 2021. So let's take this into consideration. April 3rd was a Saturday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's nearly 8 weeks ago. It's taken them 8 weeks to create a terms of reference for an investigation that should have been called immediately. So that's just dropping the ball. The health minister's really dropped the ball on this one. This inquiry will also investigate the roles and responsibility of clinicians, management, and the executives at PCH, so Perth Children's Hospital, and their escalations of issues to the Child and Adolescent Health Services Board. So what they're doing here is they're trying to blame the Child and Adolescent Health Services Board for not informing them of what's going on. And I think what's really important is the communications from the nurse to the doctors to the administration staff and all the way through up to the health minister's office. I think that's going to be the real telltale. I think they need to do a freedom of information for all those email communications, and we need to find out where the breakdown was. The inquiry team as appointed by the ACSQHC, will include medical and nursing leads with tertiary hospital experience and pediatric emergency medicine and members with experience in clinical governance, safety investigations, human factors, and medical administrations. A representative will also be nominated by Aishwarya's family. In case you don't know, I'm not a doctor, not a medical person. I've spent a lot of time in the emergency room myself, but yeah. Oh, God, I do not envy the person that has to represent the family. I think this is going to be pretty traumatic for him. So I wish him best of luck with this one. And I really, really, really genuinely hope they find out what was the cause of this failure. And I really hope procedures are put in place to prevent this from happening to anyone else. As requested by the ACSQHC, a WA-based clinician will be appointed to the panel to assist with the WA context. This will be a clinician who has not been involved in the investigation to date. A report detailing the findings, conclusions and recommendations is expected to be completed within approximately 10 weeks of the commencement of the inquiry. They still haven't given a date that it starts. The report will be provided to the family. I'm sorry, I'm butchering the name too much. So the report will be supplied to the family, the Child and Adolescent Health Services Board and Chief Executives and the Director General, who will all be able to provide comments on the report. It will then be publicly available once it is tabled in State Parliament. So this is going all the way through. We'll probably end up with a new law out of this. Okay, so terms of reference. I like this. I actually really like this first one. So, any matters raised by Aishwarya's family in relations to the care and treatment of their daughter, the conduct of the root cause analysis, RCA, and any issues identified by the RCA, and the recommendations made on the basis of those findings, the ED's staffing, patient flow model, clinical supervision and education programs as recommended in the RCA, the culture of customer service within the ED in relation to children and their families, particularly those of culturally and linguistically diverse CALD backgrounds. I understand different cultures can be different, obviously, because they're different cultures. To actually have policies written out that you have to treat people differently because of their culture, I'm not a big fan of that. It's called simple respect. So, again, you don't go up and just hug someone out of nowhere. You're invading their personal space, vice versa. You don't just go off and try to shake someone's hand, vice versa. If you see someone's wearing I think it's called a hijab, the scarf thing, keeps the face open, and you need to say check their hearing or something like that. You don't just go and pull it off because World War III will start. But what you do, you just say, hey, politely saying, I need to check your ears. What's the correct procedure for taking the religious garment off? So there's simple, polite ways of checking this. You don't need to legislate it. And if the person doesn't have simple, basic understanding of common sense, then they shouldn't be a nurse. Anyway, moving on. Roles and responsibility of clinicians, management, and the executive at PCH, and their escalations of issues to the Child and Adolescent Health Service Board. The PCH's clinical incident management process, including an assessment of previous SAC1 incidents to identify potential preventable factors. So I kind of wish they put SAC1 definitions down here somewhere. I'll just see if they did. I don't think they have. PCH's clinical risk management process and the performance of PCH in relation to safety and quality measurements as compared to national peers. I'm not a big fan of comparing PCH to, say, the Sydney Hospital or the Melbourne Hospital or the Hospital of Adelaide, or whatever they're called, because each state is going to have the different, how do I put it? Your demographics in each area is going to be different, so the requirements of each emergency department is going to be different. So comparing Perth to Sydney isn't going to work because there's a different demographics. You're not going to have a true picture of what's going on. So I think that last one is kind of stupid. The rest is pretty standard. Nothing great there. Again, this press release seems to be very, very last moment. To come up with these terms of specific terms of reference for the inquiry, we could have come up with that in an hour, if that. and it's taken them nearly 8 weeks to put this together. I seriously think he's left the protest and gone, oh shit, we need to do something, and this is what came out. Here we go. No inquiry will reduce the loss suffered by Aishwarya family, nor the distress of staff involved, but it is vital we get answers. So why didn't you call for it when it first happened? I directed the Department of Health to initiate this inquiry because it is important that we let this process run its due course to better understand what happened to Aishwarya. So okay, here we go. I directed the Department of Health to initiate this inquiry. So he has made an absolute statement that he is the one that started this inquiry. What date did he make this request to the Department of Health to initiate this inquiry? While investigations like this are not a common occurrence, they should be. They are part of the procedure in this instance. It should be a common part of this inquiry. Any preventable deaths in a hospital system should be investigated to its max degree. A preventable death should never occur. Generally, they're caused by negligence or poor procedures. So if there's ever a preventable death, we need to know why it's a preventable death, what caused it, and how do we prevent it from happening again. That's why it's a preventable death. So to say these are not a common occurrence, I don't like. And I'm not talking about the death that's a common occurrence. It's the investigation. This should be a very common occurrence. Well, not very common as in there's lots of deaths, but every time there's one of these deaths, there should be an investigation to find out why this happened. This is not acceptable by the health minister. It follows a recent root cause analysis, which recommended an independent inquiry of the PCHED. All these inquiries should be run by an independent analysis. Self-auditing has never worked, so no. The ultimate goal is for everyone to learn from these tragic cases, not only to honour the memory of Aishwarya, but also to restore public confidence in our flagship children's hospital. That is a very, very crucial comment there. I have been, for those who don't know, my youngest daughter spilled boiling water on her face, chest, and down her arms. She was in intensive care for 11 days. A few points there. I don't think her life was ever at risk, but she was like, I used to have a glorious beard. I had to shave it off because it's a great source of bacteria and all that sort of stuff. God, that was harrowing. Like, it was really bad, and I cannot speak high enough of Princess Charlotte Perth Children's Hospital. Dr. Fiona Wood was phenomenal. Justin, the occupational therapist, was phenomenal. Like, just absolutely everyone through the hospital went above and beyond what they had to do. And I watched it. I sat there and I watched, and the hospitals were just flat out. They were constant. It never stopped from. At no point did I ever see a nurse or a doctor just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, having a gay old time, having a drink of coffee, and just wasting time. They were going from patient to patient to patient to patient non-stop. One of the nurses in our department, because we actually had to be in a vacuum-sealed room, not vacuum-sealed, but a totally isolated room because of all the burns, and we were in there for about 7 hours, and she was just backwards and forwards on her feet the whole entire time. Didn't take any breaks whatsoever at all during that time period. So I really like the fact that up here they put in where was it? Not the culture. Here we go. The ED's staffing, the patient flow model, and clinical supervision and education programs. I think this is going to be a really key one. I think they're going to find out that a lot of these problems, a lot of these preventable deaths occur because the procedures are not in place, they're understaffed and overworked. And when people get tired, they make mistakes. And if you've just finished a 12-hour shift, you're tired, you're not mentally stable, mistakes happen. And unfortunately, I think the mistakes happen in this one. Something wasn't picked up which should have been picked up, and unfortunately a child's passed away because of it. All right. PCH is one of the newest hospitals in Australia, and we must ensure it is the best it can be. it is an awesome hospital. The staff are phenomenal. Yeah, I just think the staff were pushed to the limits on this day, and that is probably more likely what's happened. Looking at the health system broadly, we can be very proud of our health system and staff. Yes, I am very proud of the staff. I am not proud of the health system. I think there's a lot of problems with the health system. It is clunky, it is slow, it is problematic. A lot of people don't understand where they're supposed to be. I seriously think there needs to be a total health system overhaul, starting from the ground up, because it's an extremely inefficient health system. I know many staff are hurting over this incident, and we will continue to support them to deliver high quality care to WA's children and their families. Now is not the time to pass judgment. We should be calm, sensitive, and respectful to all those involved, and let this independent inquiry process. Yes, I agree that the inquiry should go ahead, but I hate to say, doing an inquiry is effectively finding out information so you can make a true and correct judgment. So, yeah, now's not the time to pass judgment, but judgment will come. And I think you're going to find that this gentleman will be found lacking for his judgment in the way this has been handled on a political level. I think he's just totally stuffed up, to be honest with you. Now, but there's more. There's more. So obviously, other thing that's going on big in the news at the moment. Victoria is. I think they're about to go into another lockdown, actually. So I'm just going to really quickly race through this one, because there's more in regards to the nurses and everything that's going on there. So as of last night at 5 p.m. So Victorian arrivals into WA as of 6 p.m. today, so an hour after this came out, May 25th, subject to strict new conditions. All arrivals must be tested for COVID-19 and self-quarantine until receiving a negative result. Anyone who has visited any of the exposure sites in Victoria during the relevant times should get tested immediately for COVID-19. So keyword here is should. And self-quarantine for 14 days from their date of exposure. Measures introduced based on the latest health advice and aligned with previous measures applied in December following the initial New South Wales Northern Beaches outbreak. So effectively what's happened is Victoria's gone, hey, we've got some more COVID cases. So Mark McGowan's gone, right, everyone has to self-isolate coming from Victoria. The thing I find funny is about a 4-hour flight from Victoria. So he announced this at 5 p.m. to take effect at 6 p.m. So the people that were in transit wouldn't have known about the self-isolation until they landed. So it'd be really interesting to see how many of these people were coming over just for like a weekend trip or whatever. Come over, got on the flight, started flying over here, $800 ticket. Landed, and then they've gone, oh, by the way, you got to stay here for 14 days, self-isolate, blah, 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 blah. And you're going to pay for it. That last comment, I don't know if that's true or not. But I'm skipping over this one because there's more to cover. So let's just jump straight through to the Premier Mark McGowan's comments. The situation in Victoria is fast evolving, and the source of the outbreak at this stage is still unknown, which is very concerning. So that is as of 5 p.m. yesterday. As a result, we are implementing extra precautionary measures based on the latest health advice to protect Western Australians. It don't say who gave him the health advice. This is consistent with measures taken in December last year at the beginning of the New South Wales Northern Beaches outbreak. Anyone arriving from Victoria needs to self-quarantine in a suitable premise immediately and get COVID-19 tested tomorrow. I understand that this may be inconvenient for some people, but we need to take this course of action to protect Western Australia. So this is what they should have done with the Clive Palmer incident. So when Clive Palmer tried to get into WA, they should have gone, right, you're coming from this location, you need to isolate for 14 days or quarantine for 21 days, whatever it is, and get yourself tested. Now, if Clive refused those instructions, he should have said, right, here's $20,000 fine. Are you going to do it? No, here's another $20,000 fine. right? Okay, and keep finding him until he does it, and he follows the instructions, because that's the correct way to do it. Instead, he says, "No, you're not coming in," which is a breach of the Australian Constitution. So, Mark McGowan, you failed. It's critical that anyone who is unwell or has experienced symptoms must get a COVID test immediately. I want to thank Western Australians and affected travellers for their understanding. However, my government will take whatever action required to keep Western Australians safe. Now, this is a comment that really, really concerns me. He is prepared to take any action required, not legally required, any action required to keep Western Australians safe. That screams dictator to me. Oh, we need to keep Western Australians safe, so we'll just wipe out Victoria. I still find it amazing that so many people voted for this guy. It just blows my mind. Anyway, Mark McGowan, you're a tool. But that was the ones that came through yesterday, but there's been more. So health, I'm going to skip one and go straight to the health minister, because this one seems to be involving quite a lot. There's 2 press releases from the health minister today, so I'm guessing they're going to be about COVID. Here we go. So, Western Australians urged to get influenza jab. Oh, hang on, we forgot to turn it on. Here we go. So this came out today. Western Australians urged to get the influenza jab. Hey Taz, you're here. Did the notifications come through okay for you this time? And long live coffee. All right, let's have a look here. I wonder why not. I wonder if it's a notification system on the back end. I'll go have a look later. Western Australians have been urged to get vaccinated again this year, but this time it is to get protected against influenza. So the funny thing here is apparently influenza was nearly non-existent last year. So I find it kind of fascinating that they're pushing everyone to get the influenza jab this year. I know, Taz, it does make you sad. So amid the focus of COVID-19, people are reminded influenza can also cause serious respiratory illnesses, and that immunisation provides the best protection for all ages. Now, there's a really, really good reason for doing this one. So you got to remember, COVID came out 2019, well, probably 2018, but 2019. So there's 2019 people were separated from each other. 2020 people were separated from each other. So we haven't really had a true flu season for 2 years. Yeah, I forgot to give you a call. We'll talk about other things, but that's all good, Taz. After I clean the house, I'll give you a call about putting the chat up on screen. So there's been 2 years since we've had a really, really genuinely serious flu season. So what happens is you have for lack of better words, so the flu from 2018 to 2019 isn't that much different. So you still have some antibodies and some immunity to it from the 2018 flu. But because it's been mutated 2 more times to now, if you haven't had that flu in the last 3 years, if you get the flu this year, it is going to absolutely knock you for 6. So I hate to say it, I've never had the flu vaccine. I'm young enough. I don't feel I should take it. I'm not a big person in putting random objects into my body. I have no tattoos. I have no piercings. I eat generally normal food. I don't go out eating like crickets and bats and weird shit. I'm just normal. So this is probably one of the few years where I would actually contemplate getting the flu vaccine, and purely because it's been probably a good 2 years since I last had the flu. Probably 18 months actually. I did get it during COVID. I thought I had COVID. I did not have COVID. It was just the flu. Mix in with that with like chronic hay fever. It was terrible. Yeah, don't get it. Anyway, so I probably would. I'm seriously thinking about getting the flu vaccine this year. If you're an older person, yeah, definitely get it. Like, go get it. Um, well, people should get their seasonal flu vaccine as early as possible to optimise protection over the peak period of influenza season infection in WA, typically from July to October. They should avoid getting it within 14 days of the COVID-19 vaccine dose. Okay, so there you go. So that the government is putting a priority on the COVID-19 vaccine. This 14-day time frame is a precautionary measure to manage common side effects that may come with many vaccinations. Although influenza vaccination is recommended for people of all ages, the Commonwealth and state governments funds the influenza vaccine to enable those at the greatest risk of harm from influenza illness to access it for free. So this is children from age 6 months to 5 years, primary school children, pregnant women, people over 65 years of age, Aboriginal people of all ages, and that's not a racist thing either. It's just they're the flu is effectively a British thing. Like my understanding is that's where it all started from. So we've been, as a Caucasian, I've been getting it for generations. Well, not me, but my family's been getting it for generations. Because the Aboriginals are such an old race of people, their natural DNA, their biology is slightly different to ours. Things like their ability to absorb alcohol is different to a Caucasian's. There's a few viruses and illnesses that the Aboriginal people have naturally harder time getting over, and the influenza is one of these. So, getting the flu vaccine for the Aboriginal people is actually a very smart thing. It's not a race thing; it's just biology. They don't handle the flu very well. Anyone with any underlying medical conditions that places them at risk of serious influenza infections and complications. So, Aboriginal lady up that I know in Geraldton, one of her kids got the flu, and yeah, really, really knocked the kid. It was bad. So that's one of the reasons why I'm a big supporter of this age group. Okay, young children not only experience high rates of influenza infections and hospitalizations, but are a major source of transmission to others. Kids just, they're picking their nose and coughing and spluttering and, oh wow, Booger, you want some? Sort of thing that they share everything because they're such generous beings. With less than 10% of the cohorts currently vaccinated, parents are encouraged to act now to get them immunised. Influenza vaccines are available from GP clinics, Aboriginal medical services, immunisation pharmacies, and other immunisation providers. A public awareness campaign will run across WA for several months, reminding people of the importance of getting vaccinated to prevent influenza. Need more information on the current? Never more important than in the current environment. Okay, so Roger Cook comments, while our attention has unmistakably been focused on COVID-19 vaccine, we must remember influenza illness takes a considerable toll on our community and is responsible for a large number of hospitalizations and death. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is more people died of the flu than what they ever did of the COVID. Now, something that's very interesting, in India, it has been reported that there are more people dying on a daily basis from starvation than what they are dying from COVID. And you see the amount of coverage that they're getting on the news for that. Okay, so keep going. Our hospitals, emergency departments are put under additional pressure during the peak flu season due to patients presenting with flu-like symptoms. With the onset of colder weather, we expect to see an increase in respiratory virus cases such as influenza. And with the added risk of COVID-19 outbreaks, there is more reason for everyone to get vaccinated against both viruses. Even if you are young and healthy, getting vaccinated helps to protect others in the community who are increased risk of flu complications. So there's that one from the. Whoops, we gotta go there. I pressed the wrong button. I just closed the window straight out. Oh, we've got more coming through. Fantastic. So that came through at 6 a.m. this morning. And there's another one. Yes, the flu vaccine, just get it. Yeah, whatever. Again, if you're not big on vaccines and all that sort of stuff. Don't get it. It's your choice. It's your body. Do what you want with it. And then there's another one here. Oh, interesting. The abortion argument is coming back up. So again, my favourite health minister, and the Honourable Simone McGurk, Minister for Women's Interests. I just find it fascinating that they call it Minister for Women's Interests. All right, legislations for safe and private access to abortion services reintroduced into Parliament. Okay, McGowan government reaffirms commitment to safe access to abortion services. Amendments to Public Health Act drafted after public consultations found overwhelming support for safe access zones. Okay, so before we start on this one, I am probably going to get slammed for this one. Your body, your choice. But the problem is, I never condone murder. The question is, at what point does a fetus become a person? So in America, they have the 40-week abortion bill. So if you survive the abortion and get born, you have to stay alive. But pre-birth, about this much skin is defining whether you're a human or not. And I think that's disgusting. What they're doing in America is flat out murder. 40-week abortions is murder. Sorry, but that's murder. I understand it's your body, your choice, but that's not your body anymore. You're destroying a human life. You are a murderer. Now, my personal belief is, and this is a really tough one, and I'm still kind of on the fence on it. If the baby would have survived outside of the womb, it should be considered murder. It is no longer abortion, it is murder. So I think the earliest is 22 weeks a baby survived. Prior to that, if the baby is not going to survive without the mother, I think it should be considered one body. A lot of other people have different opinions. That's fine. But if the baby could survive on its own, like it could breathe on its own, it could have its own heart rate, I think that should be considered a baby. If it can't survive, then it shouldn't be considered. It should be considered a part of the mother. Let me know what you think in the comments. They'll probably divide the people. But, that's the great thing about freedom of speech. You get to have your opinion. But the other thing you've got to take into account is, let's say, the 22 week is the cutoff. Let's say you're at 26 weeks, so the baby can survive outside of the womb. But let's say there's a complication that the going through with the birth is going to kill the mother and potentially kill them both. So it's like potentially kill both, or we terminate the pregnancy now and save the mother. See, I think that sort of an abortion should be legal, and it should be huge amounts of psychiatric help, because you're effectively killing your own child. And after the abortion, there needs to be a lot of psychiatric assistance for the mother and the father. Don't forget the father as well. So yeah, but I think the whole system needs to be updated. The McGowan government has fulfilled a commitment to reintroduce legislation that will ensure women seeking abortion can have safe, private access to health services without fear of harassment or intimidation. Yeah, I've got no problems with that. Your health, your body, your decision. Like, some random person down the street shouldn't be able to tell you what to do with your body. The reintroduction of the Public Health Amendment, Safe Access Zones Bill 2021 to Parliament today was required, as it was unable to be debated and passed in the upper house before the March election. The bill provides a safe access zone which will include the protected premises and any area within 150 metres of its boundary. The zone will apply 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A report by the Department of Health completed in 2020 found that there was overwhelming support, 70%, for safe access zones from the 4,184 community and industry responses. Within those zones, Prohibited behaviors include harassing, intimidating, threatening a person, accessing premises in which abortions are provided, communicating by any means in relations to abortion in a manner that can be seen or heard by the person accessing the premise and is reasonably likely to cause distress or anxiety, impeding a footpath, road, or vehicle without reasonable excuse in relation to abortion, recording by any means without reasonable excuse another person accessing premises at which abortions are provided without the other person's consent. See, I've got no problems with this. Most of these are already laws. You can't block footpaths or road or vehicles without a reason anyway. Communicating by any means in relations to abortions in a manner that can be seen as or heard by a person accessing the premise and is reasonably likely to cause distress or anxiety. I hate that. Reasonably likely. It's not reasonably likely that it should be does cause distress or anxiety. Harassing and intimidating people, that's just stupid. Get off your high horse. And recording people's details, because normally if you're in a public space, you can record anyone without their permission. So having a, 150 meters, having an exclusion zone of 150 meters where you can't record people without their consent, I actually don't mind that, to be honest with you. But 150 meters these days, with some of the camera technology you've got, even on your mobile phone, I wouldn't mind getting that anti-recording pushed out to maybe 200 meters. It'll just make it a little bit harder for the cameras. This bill also prohibits a person from publishing and distributing recordings of another person accessing the premise at which the abortions are provided if the recording could identify that person without their consent or reasonable excuse. So that's good. That's very, very good. I like that one. Engaging in a prohibited behaviour in a safe zone would attract a maximum penalty of $12,000 and 12 months imprisonment. What's the minimum fine? That's what I want to know. So comments from Roger Cook. This government is unwavering in its commitment to ensure women undergoing abortion and their support persons are treated with compassion, respect, and privacy at such a vulnerable time. They deserve to access health services without fear of judgment or harassment, and staff who provide care and health services also need protecting. This legislation will bring Western Australia in line with other jurisdictions within Australia in having protective measures in place for those who are accessing abortion services. I hate to say it, I think he's actually done a good job with this one. Yeah, I really don't want to. I really don't want to say he's done a good job. Oh God! But no, yeah. About the only thing I would like to see is a minimum fine, or a penalty for repeat offenders. That's something I find I'd like to know. Okay, so from Women's Interest Minister Simone, Western Australian women have the right to access legal health services without fear of being exposed or intimidated or harassed. In moving demonstrators away from the immediate vicinity in clinics, safe access zones provide privacy and safety to staff and those accessing abortions and other services, protecting them from experiencing undue anxiety and distress as they enter and leave the premises. This reasonable measure is already successfully helping women in other jurisdictions with appropriate access to legal medical procedures, so it's well and truly time we bring W online to the rest of the country. I have to admit, I've never actually seen an abortion clinic with protesters out it. I'm hopeful that people just have more common sense than to protest outside abortion clinics. The biggest problem is, like, I'm not trying to have a crack at the religious groups that are anti-abortion. That's your religious belief. That's fine. But you don't know the full story. So if you see someone walking into an abortion clinic, whether they're clearly 9 months pregnant or flat tummy, you can't tell they're pregnant at all. You don't know. Like the woman who's 9 months pregnant, crying and walking into an abortion clinic might have just found out that the baby's missing a heart, or the There's no possible way that that child is going to survive without the being connected to the mother. So you don't know. So shame on you if you're protesting outside an abortion clinic like that. That's just bad. I'm sorry, that's bad. There's better ways to get your story out there. If you're anti-abortion, write letters to the government. Do petitions to get the laws changed that to the way that you'd like it. There's proper legal procedures to follow, and standing outside an abortion clinic screaming at people saying you're a murderer, that's just stupid. By the way, I've never seen that happen in Australia, but I've seen the videos in America where they've got the signs and they're standing across the road from abortion clinics, and yeah, there's something seriously wrong with those people. Anyway, so I'm going to drop this one right there. Let us know, have you ever actually seen a protest outside of an abortion clinic? Because I haven't. I find it interesting that someone would go that far. And here's one I always find very interesting. Okay, we'll make this the last one for today because there's a couple more I'll have a read, and if they're very, very important ones, I'll make sure I put them in next week. But this I've actually seen myself happen. Whilst I was doing some maintenance on the emergency accommodation, we got up in Geraldton. We saw, I think it was 5 police cars, 2 unmarked police cars, and about 20 police officers. And there's 4 houses in the street. Like there's not much room. Like the whole street was blocked up. And so what was happening? They were removing a child from the neighbour's house. The whole street erupted. And one side's Noongar, one side's Yamatji, and they're normally fighting each other non-stop. And so what happened is both families joined together to try and stop this child being removed from the household. Whether the child should be removed or not, I'm going to leave that alone. Needless to say, 3 hours later, the child was returned because they grabbed the wrong child. No, I'm deadly serious on this one. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of the Department of Child Protective Services. I think they're a very important department. They have a role to play. Extremely poorly managed. But let's see what they've got to say. So this one's from Simone McGurk, Minister for Child Protection. Probably the reason why I don't like her. And Stephen Dawson, MLC, Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. So this is going to be a very interesting thing what happens. Okay, state government acts to address overrepresentation of Aboriginal kids in care. Taz, I hope you're still watching this one. Mirrabooka announced as a metropolitan location for 2-year Aboriginal family-led decision-making pilot. Metropolitan location for 2-year Aboriginal family-led decision-making. Okay, so Aboriginal families will be taking the lead and making decision. Okay, so $10.3 million to fund a 2-year extension to the Aboriginal in-home support service. Okay, National Sorry Day acknowledges the mistreatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who were forcibly removed from their families. Yes, 100% agree on that one. So, bit of context on this one. There was a memo from England to Australia's Governor General when the Stolen Generation first actually started. It was actually on the instructions of the British government that the kids were removed, and it wasn't for the welfare of the children. It was actually because they just want to get rid of the Aboriginals, full stop. So, a sorry needed to be said, compensation needed to be paid. It should have been the British government done this, not the Australian government. It was an instructions from the British government that did it. I'm disgusted with the Australian government for actually following through with this one. It was just bad. What they did was wrong. There's no way you can say it was good. There was a few good things that came out of it, but not many. There was way more bad than good, and it's a very, very dark stain on Australian history. And it's something that needs to be taught actually in schools about what actually happened, what caused it, and where it came from. Okay, so moving on. McGowan government working in partnership with Aboriginal people and organisations to help address overrepresentation of Aboriginal Aboriginal children in care. I don't think it's an overrepresentation. I think a lot of the problems within the Aboriginal communities can be fixed by making sure that kids go to school. I think a lot of it is a lack of education is causing for the Aboriginal children to be not well looked after, and you need to break that cycle of welfare dependencies and lack of education. The amount of, I'm talking 13, 14, 15-year-old kids who can count up to 25 because that's how much a 25 bag of dope costs. So they know how much money to count to that amount. And I know this because I actually asked them. And so, how come you know how to count to 25? That's how much a baggie costs. You ask them to spell Geraldton, and they don't know how to. You ask them to spell Australia, they don't know how. They don't even know the Australian national anthem. You also got to remember there's no actual Aboriginal written language. That was the British made it up by the sounds that they made when they spoke. So there's no. I don't know if it's actually been considered formal written language yet or not, but there was never the Aboriginal people never actually created. You know how Chinese, how they have their characters, so there's no actual written format for the Aboriginal language, which will be really interesting to see if there has been one created since white settlers, like European settlers, come to Australia. All right, the McGowan government has announced Mirrabooka as a metropolitan location for the Western Australian Trial of Aboriginal Family-Led Decision Making, AFLDM, as well as $10.3 million in additional funding to extend the Aboriginal In-Home Service Support, AISS. Yeah, I don't like it. So I don't mind this bit, the Western Australian Trial for Aboriginal Family-Led Decision Making. I think if you're making decisions about Aboriginal families, you need to have someone who understands the culture properly, assisting and supporting in those decisions. I know that Aboriginal families and communities are extremely family orientated. The elders of the families are the bee's knees. Like, you do not argue with your elder, A, because you know he's going to knock your head off, and B, he just makes the rules. You have the absolute utmost respect for the elders. So I think it's really, really important if you're going to make decisions around Aboriginal education and things like that, you need the support of the elders. You have to have them involved if there's going to get any traction at all. It's just the way the culture works. Giving them extra funding, $10.3 million additional funding to extend the Aboriginal In-Home Support Services, AISS. What about the South Sudanese refugees who need help in the home, where they're trying to marry off their 12-year-old daughters to some 53-year-old because, child brides are okay in South Sudan, and they don't understand that's not allowed in Australia? What about all the different, making something extra funding available purely because of the color of your skin? That's racism. And I can't support that racism in any form whatsoever. If there's a family that needs assistance in the house, they should get help. End of story. Doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter if you're Caucasian, doesn't matter if you're white, green, yellow, God, whatever. I'd say I'm slightly beige color. It doesn't matter. This bit needs to start being removed from decision-making policies. This is just wrong. Child Protection Minister Simon McGurk and Aboriginal Affairs Minister Stephen Dawson have also recognised National Sorry Day, which is observed on May 26, today apparently. Each year on the eve of Reconciliation Week, it acknowledges the mistreatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who were forcibly removed from their families and communities. Okay. Yeah, I've already said my piece on that. Outlining the state government's next step is in its work to address overrepresentation of Aboriginal children in out-of-home care. Miss McGurk said the announcement aims to strengthen Aboriginal self-determination and support at-risk families. I think one of the best things you can do is educate them on the risks and dangers of alcohol and drugs. I know a foster family personally who fosters Aboriginal children, and number one complaint that she says that there's problems within the community is drugs and alcohol causing people to just ignore the children and just look where the next hit is, where the next carton of beer is coming from. I think spending money on preventing drug and alcohol problems would be a lot more better spent. And I think, and this is why I'm actually quite supportive of getting the Aboriginal elders involved in this one, because if you can get the Aboriginal elders to turn around and say, look, no, you're not drinking, you're not using drugs anymore, a lot more younger children are going to do that. If you can start getting the elders to say, no, you have to go to school, you don't get a lot more support in that. I think linking welfare payments to kids attending school, I think would go a massive way to reducing a lot of the problems in the community. Let's see, for families that are at risk of child protection intervention, so that's where a child is getting abused at home, or with children already in the out of home care system, so foster care system, AFLDM is a model that provides a culturally safe space for family and extended family to have input in the decision regarding their children. Under the pilot, which will also be implemented in the Midwest Gascoyne region, independent Aboriginal conveyanors who are external to the Department of Communities will support improved collaboration with families to help keep their children safe and connected to their community. So I'm going to tell you a bit of a story that I got told the last time I was up in Geraldton. So what happens is a lot of the families up in Geraldton, the mothers are actually now sleeping directly next door to their children. So their room will be out the end of a hallway, and then directly outside of the hallway, the Aboriginal elder will be sleeping on the floor on a mattress or some blankets, whatever, to prevent people going into the mother's room to try and abuse the children. So this is some of the stories that we get told when I go up to do repairs on these places, because it's insane. Some of these stories are you pull your hair out thinking, how have we allowed the problem to get this bad? By turning a blind eye purely because it's within the Aboriginal community, this has allowed the problem to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. To the point where on our camera footages, I've just been told this the last couple of days that there was a gentleman because one of the units is vacant at the moment, that he was in the backyard playing with himself, looking over the fence at the neighbours' kids. So the police are doing their thing, they've got the footage, they're doing all that sort of stuff. This is getting insane. This is getting out of hand. And the guy probably thinks he's doing nothing wrong because he's able to get away with it before. And it is definitely something wrong. And this has been because people, especially politicians, have been too scared to say, no, you guys are stuffing up. You need to pay the consequences for your actions. You need to be able to be accountable for your family as a whole. So, and that's the job of that's what I see, the job of the elders in the family. They're sort of like the disciplinarian person within the family. So I love the fact that this is about dragging the elders into the family, into the decision making for the families. I think is a really important step. Is it too late? I don't know. I think a lot of kids have suffered because it's being done too late. Where were we? The trial will work along 3 cohorts. Aboriginal families engaged in pre-birth planning with the goal of preventing infants from coming into care. Aboriginal families engaged in intensive family support with the goal of preventing children from coming into care. Aboriginal families where one or more of the children in the family group are in care with the aim of working towards safely returning them to family reunification. Wow. Oh, do I say it? Do I say it? Do I say it? I think I have to. One of the, one of the reasons, and I know this because they shout it at me every time I go out there because obviously my skin's beige color. Um, I've asked one of the families why do they have so many kids, and her response was, "So you white C can give me more money." A lot of the people up there that do have major drug problems, they're pumping out kids just so they get more dole money, they get more child support money, so they can buy more drugs. That's the only reason they're doing it. They don't care about the kids. There was a incident up in the Northern Territory where a mother used her very own baby as a weapon and was hitting people with the baby. That's the problem that drugs are causing in these communities, and it's not isolated to the Aboriginal communities either. There's other communities where people are just absolutely mistreating kids purely to fund their drug addictions. Um, and then if you've got families that were that alcohol and drug affected, that they had more than one child taken into care, do you really want to try and return those children to those family members? I yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't see this going well. With difference from the AFLDM already in place in Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland, kind of question why aren't they doing this in Northern Territory where most of the problems are? Why are they intentionally picking all the better states? The Western Australian trial is the key to ensuring that the best model for Western Australia is adopted. The state government will be investing $715,000 to establish its implementation. The pilot complements a range of other initiatives to improve the safety of children, including the AISS program and efforts to expand and build the capacity of Aboriginal community-controlled organisations in Western Australia. Yeah, that whole concept, Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. If you listen to the scuttlebutt, as long as you've got a 51% controlled business, you will have an unfair advantage in winning tenders. So let's say you've got a landscaping business, there's 3 business partners, 2 of them are Aboriginal, you apply for a contract. If you're against a totally Caucasian owned business or Asian or African or whatever business, it will go default to the Aboriginal controlled business purely because it's Aboriginal controlled. It's got no basis on merit whatsoever. So I really don't like that. After speaking to a few councillors, there's apparently quite a few unwritten laws like that, which needs to stop because that's racism. The $10.3 million for the AISS comprises funding for the services operation and will support its expansion into regional areas through the co-design process. I don't know why they're not starting in the regional areas, because especially if you go by the cases of child abuse, drug and alcohol charges, and reports of violence within the community based on per capita, the towns with the highest rates of assault, sexual assault, assault and battery, drug and alcohol related offences per capita should be where these programs are starting, not in the metropolitan area where there's so many of these non-for-profit organisations that are just leeching off the government. They're not addressing the places where the real issues are. So I think it's stupid starting in the city. It should be starting in the regional areas and then coming down through case-by-case area. The AISS, which is delivered by the Wangaring Aboriginal Corporation, works with families to build their capacity to support their children, respond to stressful situations, deal with behavioural issues, and overcome trauma. So it'd be better if you could prevent the trauma from happening. It provides intensive in-home practical support for Aboriginal families to address safety issues, keep children safe at home, and reunify children safely with their parents. The program operates under the state government's Earlier Intervention and Family Support (EIFS) strategies and contributions to the implementation and achievement of a number of government priorities, including the National Agreement on Closing the Gap and Target 120 program. Go away with the Close the Gap. So the Close the Gap is talking about the wage gap between men and women. It doesn't exist. Since the EIFS strategy was implemented, the Department of Communities has recorded the lowest growth rate of children in care in more than 20 years and the lowest growth rate of Aboriginal children entering out of care since 2004. That's a good sign. That is a very good sign. Now, my question is it because no one's reporting it or are the children being killed? Which is a very, very sad thing. I hope it's not, but I'm paid. Well, not paid. I don't do this to get paid. I'm paid to be cynical. Okay, comments from Simone McGurk. The AFLDM pilot is to be implemented in Mirrabooka. It is significant because it aims to give Aboriginal people greater ownership of issues around family and child safety and reinforces the efforts to address the high number of Aboriginal children in the Children Protective System. There's a Aboriginal lady who takes her child to the same school as my kids. She is an absolute angel. She is a saint. She is an amazing woman. Her partner committed suicide a couple of years ago. So what happens is she goes around and she picks up, not only takes her daughter, but she's got a wagon and she picks up all the cousins. Probably 90% of the time she's late to school because she's going around chasing the kids, getting them ready, getting them into the car. But she brings a whole entire lot of them to the school. And they're all getting educations. They're very well behaved kids. All of them, even when they're together, they're absolutely phenomenal. And I cannot stress how great of a job this lady is doing. And then you get absolutely no recognitions for people like that. And it all starts in the home. And this is why I love the fact that they're getting the elders involved in this. Well, I'm hoping they're getting the elders involved in this because the respect that the Aboriginal people have for the elders is phenomenal. The program will empower Aboriginal families in the Mirrabooka area to have a direct voice in informing decisions to help keep children safe or work towards effective reunification. Similarly, the extension of the Aboriginal in-home support service will help to reinforce Aboriginal ownership of outcomes for children who have contact with the Child Protection System. Yeah, the Child Protection System just does not work. As we acknowledge past hurts and the strength of stolen generation survivors on National Sorry Day, it's important to remember that we can all play a part in supporting the ongoing healing process. I think a part of that is acknowledgement from the British government that they messed up on this. And I'm saying seriously messed up on this. So I'd love to hear the British government acknowledge what they've done was bad. Okay, Stephen Dawson. Reconciliation is more than a word. It takes action. Funny you should say that. Anyway, the McGowan government is committed to Aboriginal-led approach that empowers families as well as prioritising their safety. These measures will go a long way to strengthening Aboriginal community-controlled organisations' involvement in support services across our state, building their capacity to deliver culturally appropriate solutions to issues affecting their community. Just take ownership with the problems. So I'm a little bit interested why Meredith Amat didn't get her picture all the way up here. There's a square for it. Okay, Mirrabooka MLA. I'm proud to be part of a McGowan government that is working to support and improve collaboration with Aboriginal families involved in the Child Protective System. The AFLDM pilot will bring Aboriginal families and extended family members in the Mirrabooka area together with an independent conveyor in a culturally safe environment to work towards the best possible outcome for their children. I like the fact that they are doing the focus on the kids. I don't like the fact that there's a whole heap of what they call it. I lost where it was called. Aboriginal community controlled organisations. I don't like that. That's just open to abuse. All right, and comments attributed to Wangaring Aboriginal Corporation CEO Daniel Morrison. On behalf of the Wanganing Aboriginal Cooperation and our partners, Benza, Aboriginal Corporation. Oh, far out. More digit. Port and Moraditch Gurlonga. We are delighted to see the WA government commitment to a further 2 years of the AISS. We are confident, based on the independent evaluation of the program, that it has been success and will continue to be a great support to our community over the next 2 year period. Yeah, I'm going to have to find out how to pronounce these things. Again, if you're watching the stream and you do speak, if I had to have a guess, I'd say it's Noongar. Well, it's either Noongar or Yamaji. They're the main two languages in WA. If you can show me the proper way to pronounce these words, that would be absolutely awesome. But I'm going to leave it there because I need to get the kid from school. Summary on this one. I like the fact that they're getting the elders involved. I hate the fact that a lot of the support services is only for Aboriginal people because there's lots of families that need help out there. And I'm a little bit annoyed about that side of things. So, Roger Cook, you failed in this one because you're just selling out. You're doing what the populace like. You're just responding to the people who are singing and dancing the loudest. You're not actually doing your job properly. After that young child's death, you should have called an immediate investigation, find out what's going on. It was a preventable death. You should have been doing it 8 weeks ago instead of doing it now after they had a protest. Minister for Women's Services or whatever, McGurk. Yeah, nah. I'm sorry. I still feel you're a bit of a racist in this one. You're pandering to the Aboriginal people and the Aboriginal promoters to try and get as much money for them as possible without actually doing your job properly. You're not focusing on the children. You're just trying to appease people who scream the loudest. I don't feel you guys are doing a good job. Whoever's decision was to get the elders involved in this, I think you guys are doing a very good job, and keep going. Keep communicating with those elders because they're the ones that have the true power within the Aboriginal communities. They're the ones that tell people what's going on. They're the ones you need to get on your side to start getting these kids into the school. Once you can get the kids into the school, they can learn things like how to clean themselves properly, how to feed themselves properly, how to add, subtract, spell, speak, how to get a job. So again, Scott Morrison, I have to support you on this one. The best form of welfare is a job, and the best way to get a job is to at least finish year 10 high school and then get yourself a trade or something like that. So I think that's the biggest thing that can help the Aboriginal people break that constant welfare cycle. So anyway, this has been Travis Carter on Carter's Corner Daily. It was the 26th of May. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.